psychology, philosophy, and neuroscience. I've always been interested in the science ever since I was a small child, and I went to college and knew that I wanted to major in biology, and that I wanted to be a scientist, and that I didn't want to go to med school. And so I really didn't know at that point exactly what I wanted to do. I actually started out in ecology. So my sophomore and junior years in college, I was working for a professor who did field ecology work. It was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it, but I realized that I was much more interested in the mechanisms when I had the opportunity to start working in the lab. And I realized in doing that I was really much more interested in that than I was in the ecology questions. As much as I actually really loved being outside all the time, I wanted to be able to tease apart the really detailed questions and to do controlled experiments that are easier to do in the lab. You can do them in the field, but it's easier. And I got interested in cooperation. So I applied to graduate school to study cooperation. I wasn't one of those people who from when the time I was little knew that I wanted to work with chimpanzees or be Jane Goodall. I was really interested in the questions, and so I sort of followed the questions, and that's how I ended up where I am and studying the species that I'm studying. Well, obstacle-wise, I've been fairly lucky because I don't think I've faced any greater obstacles than really anyone else has when they're trying to be a scientist. I mean, there are big obstacles in terms of figuring out what you want to do. Then you've got to find a graduate program to do it, and then you have to get a job on the other end. I suffer from what's called the two-body problem. So I've got a spouse who also needs a job and 3 kids who also take up my time. But again, there I've been lucky because I've got a spouse who's very, very flexible, so he can find a job around my geographic constraints, which makes it a lot easier. Other people don't have that luxury. So what I would tell anyone who is aspiring to be a scientist, whether they were male or female, would be to find something that you're passionate about, because science is an odd job. It doesn't really end. I mean, I don't leave my work at the end of the day. I take it home with me, and I'm working on it all the time. I'm just as likely to be sitting on the beach reading something that's going to go into my next paper as I am to be reading something that's just for fun, because I do enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. And so you need to have something that you're really passionate about. If you aren't, you won't have the good ideas, and you won't have what it takes to stay up until 2 in the morning multiple nights in a row before the grant's due or whatnot. Specifically, if I was talking to a young female, I'd tell them to take lots of math and science classes, and that as they went higher and higher in education and there were fewer and fewer females in class with them, to stick it out. One of the things that's been shown is that people aren't likely to do well in a class unless they have a professor or a role model that they can identify with. And so you get lots of male science and math teachers, and one of the arguments is that in girls' schools, where you tend to have more female teachers, women are more likely to major in science and math, or more likely to take science and math. And it could be because if your high school has no female science and math teachers, you may implicitly assume that this is for males. I think it may be particularly challenging for women to stick with it, or girls to stick with it, when they don't have a lot of these role models. And there's also this myth that somehow it's very difficult to be a female scientist and balance it with family. Balancing family and work is just hard.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that it's any harder being a scientist than it is being anything else. And as a matter of fact, it's probably easier than some things, because I have a much more flexible schedule than a lot of my friends who also have, important jobs but not in the sciences, which to some degree makes my life easier. It also makes it harder because I bring my work home with me, and the kids don't really care about whatever I happen to be reading. I think it's important to see that someone who's like you can do it.
Yes, well, thank you very much.